Our forever home was supposed to be a sanctuary. Instead, on moving day, it became ground zero for a shocking confrontation between local police and a tactical military unit. The air smelled of fresh-cut grass and opportunity. That's what I remember most about that Saturday. We'd finally done it. After years of saving, of me being away on business trips that my wife Sarah heroically never pried too deeply into, we'd bought our dream house. A 2-story colonial with a big oak tree in the front yard, nestled in a quiet, manicured suburb that looked like it was ripped straight from a movie set. Our 5-year-old daughter, Maya, was vibrating with excitement in the back seat, her face pressed against the window. "Is that it, Daddy? Is that our forever house?" I caught Sarah's eye in the rearview mirror, and the smile she gave me could have powered the entire city. "That's it, sweetie. Our forever house." I pulled our beat-up but reliable SUV into the driveway, the engine cutting out with a grateful sigh. For a moment we just sat there, soaking it in. This was it. The culmination of everything. A safe place, a good school district, a tire swing on that oak tree, a normal life. That's all I'd ever wanted for them when I was thousands of miles away in places where normal didn't exist. We piled out of the car, and Maya immediately ran to touch the big red front door. I was grabbing the first box of kitchen supplies from the trunk when the prickle started on the back of my neck. It's a feeling I've learned to trust implicitly. It's the feeling of being watched, of a situation changing without any obvious sign. I scanned the street. A woman was peering at us through her blinds across the way. A man walking his golden retriever slowed his pace, his gaze lingering. I understood. We were the new family, the only black family on the block. I wasn't naive, but I was hopeful. I gave the man a small, friendly nod. He just stared for a second longer, before quickly looking away and picking up his pace. Sarah must have felt the shift too. "Everything okay, Marcus?" she asked, her voice a little tight. "Just new neighbors being curious," I said, forcing a reassuring smile. "Let's get this stuff inside. I promised someone a pizza party on the floor for dinner." That seemed to break the tension. We started unloading, the rhythm of our movements familiar and comfortable. I was carrying Maya's box, filled with stuffed animals and picture books, when I saw it. A police cruiser turning onto our street, moving impossibly slow. My training kicked in instantly. I didn't just see a car. I saw angles, exits, potential threats. My body went on high alert, but my face remained a mask of calm. The cruiser wasn't just passing through. It was coming for us. It pulled up and parked directly behind our SUV, blocking us in. The sterile blue and red lights started flashing, silently painting our new home, our new life, in strokes of emergency and suspicion. Maya, who had been trying to help her mom with a small bag, froze and ran to hide behind Sarah's legs. The simple, innocent joy of the day evaporated, replaced by a cold, familiar dread. 2 officers got out. The one on the driver's side was older, with a thick mustache and a gut that strained the buttons on his uniform. He moved with an air of bored authority. The other was younger, fitter, but his eyes were hard, scanning us like we were pieces on a board. The older one, whose name tag read Miller, sauntered up to me. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask if we needed help. He hooked his thumbs in his belt and looked from our car to our house and then to me. "This your vehicle?" he asked, his tone dripping with accusation. I kept my hands visible, away from my pockets. "Yes, officer, it is." "What are you doing here?" The question was so loaded it was practically a weapon. I gestured towards the house. "We're moving in." "We just closed on this house yesterday." Miller shared a smirk with his partner, Davis. "You closed on the house," he said, using air quotes. "Funny. We got a call about a suspicious vehicle. People casing the neighborhood." My jaw tightened. "Well, I can assure you, we're not casing anything. We own the place. My wife and daughter and I are just unloading our things." I tried to sound reasonable, accommodating. The first rule of de-escalation is to remove ego. But it's hard when someone is trying to strip you of your dignity in front of your family. "I'm going to need to see some ID and the registration for the vehicle," Miller demanded. "Of course." I moved slowly, deliberately. "Sarah, honey, could you get the paperwork from the glove compartment?" Sarah nodded, her face pale, and carefully opened the car door to retrieve the folder. I pulled out my wallet. As I handed him my driver's license, he scoffed. "North Carolina plates. You're a long way from home, aren't you?" "I'm stationed at Fort Bragg. We just got transferred," I explained, keeping my voice level. He barely glanced at my license before handing it back. Sarah gave him the registration and the proof of insurance. He looked them over, then handed them back too, clearly disappointed that they were all in order. But he wasn't done. He was enjoying this. "Still seems mighty suspicious to me," Miller said, circling me like a shark. "This is a nice neighborhood. Very expensive. You sure you're in the right place?" And there it was. The real question. The one that had nothing to do with my car or my license plates. The cold calm that I'd relied on in firefights and interrogations washed over me. I could feel my heartbeat slow down, my focus sharpen. I was no longer just Marcus, the husband and father. A different part of me was taking over. The part that assesses a threat and neutralizes it. "I'm positive," I said, my voice dropping an octave. The friendly dad was gone. "I have the deed to the house right here in this box if you'd like to see it." Miller's eyes narrowed. He didn't like the change in my tone. He saw it as a challenge. "You know what? I think I would. But first, why don't you put your hands on the hood of your car for me? Assume the position." "Officer," I said, my voice still dangerously quiet, "there is absolutely no reason for that. We have done nothing wrong." "I'll be the judge of that," he barked, his hand moving to rest on the butt of his sidearm. "You're failing to comply with an officer's instructions. Now get on the car before I help you get there." I could see Maya start to cry, silently, her little body shaking. Sarah put a protective hand on her shoulder, her eyes pleading with me. I knew what I had to do. For them. I took a deep breath and turned to place my hands on the hood. The metal was still warm from the engine. This was a calculated submission, a strategic retreat. But as Davis began to pat me down, Miller turned his attention to my wife. His gaze was dismissive, ugly. He looked at Sarah, who was trying to comfort our sobbing daughter, and a cruel smile played on his lips. "All right," he said, his voice loud enough for the whole street to hear. "Get her out of the car. We need to search her too." A switch flipped inside my head. It wasn't anger, not the hot red kind that makes you shout. It was cold. It was the calm that descends in the moments before everything goes sideways. The chilling clarity I only feel when the stakes are absolute. The part of me that I had fought so hard to leave in the dust of Afghanistan and the jungles of God knows where, the part that calculates, assesses, and eliminates, slipped its leash. I slowly turned my head, the rough metal of the car hood cold against my palms. My eyes found Officer Miller's. I didn't say a word. I just looked at him. I let him see the shift. I let him see the person who had been patiently complying was gone, replaced by someone else entirely. The jovial suburban dad was a ghost. His smug expression faltered for a fraction of a second. The younger officer, Davis, who had been patting me down, actually took a half step back. He felt it too. "Officer," I said, and my voice was gravel. It was a command tone, honed in places where a suggestion gets you killed. "You will not go near my wife. You will not touch her. You will not speak to her again. Do you understand me?" Miller puffed out his chest, his bravado a flimsy shield against the sudden chill in the air. "Are you threatening me? Are you resisting arrest? Because we can add that to the list, pal." "That wasn't a threat," I said, my gaze unwavering. "It was a statement of fact. You are creating a situation you are not equipped to handle. I am giving you one final opportunity to de-escalate. Get in your car and leave my family alone." Behind me, I could hear Sarah whispering to Maya, trying to shield her, trying to be the rock she'd always been. But I could hear the tremor in her voice. That tremor was like gasoline on a fire. Miller laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "I'm not equipped. I'm the one with the badge and the gun, genius." He took a deliberate step towards Sarah and Maya. "Now, ma'am, if you'll just step away from the car." That was it. The final opportunity had been declined. In one smooth, fluid motion, I stood up straight, pushing off the hood of the car. It wasn't an aggressive move, but it was decisive. Davis instinctively put his hand on his sidearm, yelling, "Hey, I told you to stay on the car." I ignored him completely. My focus was entirely on Miller. He had frozen mid-step, surprised by my sudden movement. "You've made your choice," I said, my voice still dangerously low. I reached into my pocket, and for a second both officers tensed, their hands flying to their weapons. I saw the flash of fear in their eyes. They thought I was going for a weapon. I moved with slow, deliberate precision, letting them see my empty hand before my fingers wrapped around my cell phone. I pulled it out. Miller's face contorted with a mixture of confusion and rage. "What the hell do you think you're doing? Calling your lawyer?" he spat. "No," I said, unlocking the phone with my thumb and hitting a single-speed dial icon. "I'm calling my boss." The phone didn't even ring once before a clipped professional voice answered. "Go." I didn't say hello. I didn't waste a single word. My training took over, and I became a reporting instrument. My eyes locked on Miller, reading his badge number as I spoke. "This is Sergeant Major Marcus Thorne," I said, my voice hard as steel. I saw Miller's eyebrows shoot up. The rank was unexpected. "I am at 124 Willow Creek Lane, Fayetteville. I am being unlawfully detained in my own driveway by city police officers Miller, badge 714, and Davis, badge 822. They are conducting a baseless, unwarranted stop and have threatened to physically search my wife in front of our 5-year-old child." The voice on the other end was calm, but I could hear the underlying fury. "Understood, Sergeant Major. Is your family in immediate physical danger?" I watched as Miller's face went from smug to uncertain. He was starting to realize this wasn't the usual traffic stop. He was starting to realize he was no longer in control. "The situation is hostile but contained. Officer Miller is the primary aggressor. He appears unstable," I reported, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. "I am requesting immediate military police and JAG liaison to my location." "Liaison is en route. The base commander has been notified," the voice replied. "General Redding is on his personal line and wants a direct patch." My blood ran cold. The general himself. This had just escalated far beyond what I could have imagined. A new voice, older, sharper, and radiating pure command, came on the line. "Thorne, what's your status? Talk to me." I held the phone to my ear, but my eyes never left Miller. His face had gone pale. He'd heard it. He'd heard the word "General." "Sir," I said into the phone, but my words were a warning aimed directly at the 2 cops standing frozen on my brand-new lawn. "The hostiles are armed and displaying extreme prejudice. I believe we have a code blackout situation." Code blackout. The words hung in the air, heavy and absolute. It wasn't an official military term. It was something my unit used for situations that had gone so far off the rails they were irredeemable, situations that required a total information lockdown and an overwhelming, immediate response. On the other end of the line, I heard a sharp intake of breath from General Redding. He knew exactly what it meant. "Understood, Sergeant Major." The general's voice was grim. "Hold your position. Do not engage unless your family's safety is directly compromised. Reinforcements are 5 minutes out. I want your phone on speaker." I tapped the screen, and the general's voice, amplified by the small speaker, boomed into the quiet suburban street. "This is Major General Redding of the United States Army Special Operations Command. To the officers on scene, you have 2 minutes to return to your vehicle and vacate the premises before you are in direct violation of UCMJ Article 92, interfering with a U.S. military operation." It was a bluff, of course. We were on civilian soil. But it was a bluff delivered with the force of a battle tank, and it landed with devastating effect. The younger officer, Davis, looked like he'd seen a ghost. His hand dropped from his sidearm as if it had been burned. He looked at Miller, his eyes wide with panic. "Miller, what did we just do?" But Miller was a different breed. He was cornered, his authority publicly stripped away in front of the neighbors who were now openly staring from their windows and porches. His fear was being quickly replaced by a stubborn, stupid pride. "Military operation?" Miller sneered, trying to regain his footing. "You're in my jurisdiction. I don't care if you're Santa Claus. You don't give me orders." He pointed a trembling finger at me. "And you're under arrest for obstruction of justice." He made a move for me, reaching for my arm. Before he could touch me, a sound split the air. Not a siren. It was deeper, more menacing. It was the rhythmic thumping of rotor blades. Two matte black shapes appeared over the treetops, flying low and fast. They weren't police helicopters. They were MH-6 Little Birds, the infamous night stalkers of the 160th SOAR. They circled once like vultures, before one of them descended, its downdraft whipping the leaves on the big oak tree into a frenzy. The street, which had been silent moments before, was now a scene of utter chaos. Cars pulled over. People ran inside. Miller and Davis stared up at the sky, their faces a mask of disbelief and terror. The little bird didn't land. It hovered about 20 feet above the street, and from its side 4 figures in full tactical gear rappelled down with terrifying speed and precision. They hit the pavement in a 4-point stance, rifles up, moving like a single organism. They didn't wear police uniforms. They were clad in the gray, featureless kit of a Tier 1 unit. They formed a perimeter around us, around me, Sarah, and Maya. In seconds, their weapons pointed outward, creating an impenetrable wall of firepower between my family and the 2 local cops. One of them, his face obscured by a helmet and goggles, turned to me and gave a short, sharp nod. I nodded back. I knew these men. I had bled with them. General Redding's voice crackled from the phone again, no longer bluffing. "Officers Miller and Davis, you are now officially obstructing a matter of national security. You will drop your weapons. Now." Davis, looking at the muzzles of 4 assault rifles aimed in his general direction, immediately unbuckled his holster and let his pistol clatter to the ground. He raised his hands high above his head, but Miller was shaking, his face flushed with rage and humiliation. "This is insane! You can't do this! This is my town!" From down the street, 2 black Chevy Tahoes with government plates screeched around the corner, followed closely by a military police Humvee. They boxed in the patrol car, leaving no room for escape. Men in suits and MP armbands piled out. The ranking man from the suits, a tall man with a severe face I recognized as JAG Prosecutor Colonel Thompson, strode directly to Miller. The 4 operators from my unit never flinched, their perimeter holding steady. "Officer Miller," Colonel Thompson said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "My name is Colonel Thompson, JSOC Judge, Advocate General's Office. You and your partner are being detained pending an investigation by the Department of Justice and the Department of Defense for civil rights violations and interfering with a command-level asset." Miller just stared, his mouth agape. The illusion of his power, of his control, had been so utterly and completely shattered, he couldn't even process it. I finally ended the call with the general and knelt down to Maya, who was clinging to Sarah's leg, her eyes wide. I scooped her into my arms. "It's okay, baby girl. The monsters are gone." As I held her, I looked over the scene. My men in a defensive circle, MPs cuffing 2 bewildered local cops, a JAG colonel reading them their rights, a combat helicopter hovering over my new house. The neighbors I had hoped to have a barbecue with were now hiding behind their curtains, no doubt convinced they'd moved in next to a spy or a crime lord. My new life. My normal life. It had lasted less than 15 minutes. Colonel Thompson walked over to me, his expression grim. "Sergeant Major Thorne, Marcus. I'm sorry you had to deal with this." "It's not your fault, Colonel," I said, my voice weary. "Perhaps not," he replied, his eyes glancing towards the cuffed officers. "But we have a bigger problem. It turns out this suspicious person call wasn't just a random neighbor. It came from inside the Fayetteville Police Department. It was a setup, Marcus. And Officer Miller's sister-in-law? She's the county's new district attorney." The colonel's words landed like a gut punch. A setup. The county DA. This wasn't just a case of 2 racist cops on a power trip. This was organized. This was a targeted attack, and they had used my family as the bait. The cold calm I'd maintained throughout the encounter began to fray, replaced by a slow-burning familiar rage. They hadn't just harassed us. They had put my wife and daughter in the crosshairs of a premeditated plan. "What's the play, Colonel?" I asked, my voice low. I shifted Maya in my arms. Her small head was buried in my shoulder. She was exhausted, the adrenaline of the last hour finally giving way to sleep. Thompson's jaw was set. General Redding is already on the phone with the governor. The Department of Justice is taking lead on the civil rights investigation. And we, the military, are handling the national security aspect. That code blackout of yours gave us all the justification we need to declare this entire street a temporary military jurisdiction. He gestured to the MPs who were now methodically searching Miller and Davis's patrol car. We're treating this as a potential attempt to compromise a high-level special operations asset. That gives us a lot of latitude. Sarah, who had been standing silently beside me, finally spoke, her voice shaking but firm. What does that mean for us? For this house? We just got here. Thompson's severe expression softened as he looked at her. Ma'am, I promise you, we will handle this. The full weight of the United States military and the Department of Justice is about to come down on this little town's police department. They wanted a fight. They just didn't realize they were picking it with a titan. Over the next few hours, our quiet suburban street was transformed into a full-blown command post. The helicopter left, but the Tahoes and Humvees remained. Federal agents arrived, their dark suits a stark contrast to the tactical gear of my unit. The neighbors stayed inside, the story of what was happening likely spreading through the neighborhood like wildfire. Miller and Davis were taken away in federal custody, looking broken and utterly defeated. My team, my brothers-in-arms, eventually collapsed their perimeter, their mission complete. Before they left, the team leader, a man I knew only as Ghost, put a hand on my shoulder. Glad you and your family are safe, Sergeant Major. You need anything. You know how to reach us. I just nodded, the gratitude too deep for words. By sunset, the only ones left were myself, Sarah, Maya, now fast asleep in her new, empty room on a pile of blankets, and Colonel Thompson, who was sitting at our newly unpacked kitchen table. He had a stack of files in front of him. We got them, he said, not bothering with pleasantries. The phone records were easy. Miller and the new DA, a woman named Karen Lynch, planned the whole thing. It turns out this neighborhood was part of her family legacy. Her great-grandfather built some of the original houses. When she found out a black family had bought this one, her grandfather's old house, no less, she decided to make an example of us. An example? Sarah asked, her voice filled with disbelief. She wanted to send a message, Thompson explained, his disgust evident. Use her brother-in-law to run you out of town on your first day. Accuse you of a felony, obstruct, resist arrest, something that would stick, ruin your career, and force you to sell. They figured you were just some regular soldier. They never, in their wildest dreams, imagined they were targeting the command sergeant major of the nation's most elite special missions unit. It was the oldest, ugliest story in the book, just dressed up in a modern suburb. It wasn't about a suspicious vehicle. It was about possession. It was about who they thought belonged and who didn't. So what happens now? I asked. Now, Thompson said, a grim smile touching his lips. We burn their world to the ground. Metaphorically, of course. He opened a file. D.A. Lynch is being brought up on federal charges of conspiracy to violate civil rights under color of law. Miller and Davis are facing the same, plus a host of other charges. Their careers are over. They're facing significant prison time. The FBI is launching a full-scale probe into the Fayetteville PD for patterns of racial discrimination. General Redding spoke to the governor, who has publicly requested the DA's immediate resignation and promised a state-level investigation. He slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a formal, written apology from the governor of North Carolina and the mayor of Fayetteville. It was just paper, but it was a start. They wanted to make you an example, Marcus, Thompson said, his eyes meeting mine. Well, the general decided to oblige them. Your family is now the example of what happens when you mistake a quiet professional for a soft target. You're the example of what happens when institutional rot is met with overwhelming force. The next morning, the street was quiet again. The government vehicles were gone. It was just a Saturday. Again. I was outside looking at the big oak tree when my new neighbor from across the street, the woman I'd seen peering through her blinds, walked over. She was holding a freshly baked apple pie. We've, she stammered. We are so sorry for what happened yesterday. We didn't know what to do. We saw them harassing you and we were scared. But what you did, what happened after, Well, this neighborhood has needed a shake-up for a long time. She offered the pie. Welcome to the neighborhood. We're glad you're here. I took the pie, the warmth of it seeping into my hands. A few other doors opened. People waved. The man with the golden retriever gave me a sheepish nod from his lawn. It wasn't perfect. The scars of yesterday would remain. But it was a beginning. Later that evening, I finally put up the tire swing on the big oak tree. As I pushed Maya, her laughter echoed in the twilight, mingling with the scent of fresh-cut grass. Sarah came and stood beside me, leaning her head on my shoulder. "Think this will be our normal life now," she whispered. I looked at my daughter swinging without a care in the world, at the lights coming on in the houses around us, at the pie sitting on our kitchen counter. The fight had come to our front door, but we had met it. We had held our ground. We had won. "Yeah," I said, pulling her close and kissing her forehead. "I think it's a new kind of normal, and I think it's going to be just fine."